Okay, I'll call the committee of the whole meeting to order. I'll start with, in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, we acknowledge the town of Edson is located on Treaty 6, the traditional ancestor of the Nikawa, Sotu, Sika, Pinagi, Kena, Dene, Sotu, and Optawiki and Métis Nations. We honor and acknowledge the land, the elders, and youth which we gather here on our ancestors who have gathered here for centuries. And with that said, I'll ask for an adoption of the agenda, please. Councillor Chechka.
I move that the agenda for the February 13th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted as presented.
And we're doing hand. Okay, all those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Okay, and adoption of the agenda from, adoption of the previous minutes of December 12th, 23 Committee of the Whole meeting. And that would be Councillor Moore.
I so move.
Okay, with that said, all those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. And then we are moving on to, okay, there's no delegations, reports. We are moving on to E2, Infrastructure and Operation, Land Use Bylaw Rewrite Project presented by Clayton Kidlitz, General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Chouinard and Council. Pretty excited to present this material tonight. Hopefully I can figure out how to use this technology. Where are you? Right here. It's not the one I want. Bear with me. Do that first. There. Okay. Thanks for your patience. See if that comes up. Perfect. So again, we're here to present, I guess, the draft land use bylaw, or rewrite of the current land use bylaw. It's been worked on for just about 2 years now. I think when I look back, the first time Urban Systems came to talk to council to kick off the project, it was February 2022, I believe. So we're much 2 years down the road. This will represent sort of the final draft, and now I say final draft, we're still in an engagement process. That's what this is kicking off. We're looking for our third and final round of engagement from the community and from council on this particular document, which will also lead into, my guess is, some changes and some tweaks in preparation for bringing this back to council for consideration. Following the principles that were set out by council at START's project, this bylaw is to increase flexibility, be simple and concise and purposeful, clear and easy to interpret, visually pleasing and user-friendly, be enforceable, and follow best practice. So what I thought I'd do to take the opportunity to go through, this is the PDF interactive version that'll be available on the website, project website tomorrow for residents and landowners to view. But I wanted to take the time to just demonstrate some of the ease of use and the operability of this document. Along the right margin is a clickable sort of table of contents that takes you to different parts of the bylaw. If you don't want to scroll, you can simply click on one of these icons and it'll take you right to that portion of the bylaw. If you want to go to a specific page, you can click on that and it'll take you right to that area. If I want to go back to the table of contents, You click on that, it'll take you back to the table of contents. You can pick any one of these listings in the table of contents, so directly to an area. Sorry, every time you click on it, it wants to go back to a smaller size, so that's a bit unfortunate, but we'll work on that. Where do I want to go? I want to go show you some of the graphics that are included in the bylaw to help with the visual and ease of use and interpretation. So again, we have figures throughout the bylaw that help to illustrate what the regulations are trying to tell us. This one in particular talks about yard setbacks, what the front yard is compared to the sides or rears. And these are riddled throughout the document to help with the interpretation of the regulations. Again, at any point in time, you can navigate to a different section of the bylaw and back just by clicking on these icons on the right-hand margin. Very clickable and easy to use. One of the things I wanted to share about this particular draft land use bylaw, what this bylaw isn't, although it's easier to use than our existing one and has is better for interpretation, it's not what I would call leading edge. Based on the direction we had starting out with this bylaw, this was about updating what we have in place today, bringing us into sort of a current state of best practices when it comes to land use. I don't think what you would find by reviewing this bylaw is we went anywhere to leading edge regulation and provisions that put us in the front end of land use when it comes to this community. What we wanted to do is consider the Edson context and make it a document that can be used here in Edson. So that was our goal, and we're pretty happy with where we landed. Notwithstanding that we're still hoping to get some feedback from council and the public on whether we hit the mark or not. So I just wanted to do a little bit of demonstration of the clickability. I won't go through any more of that. Just wanted to quickly show that the document is very easy to get through and navigate around quite easily. The second important part about a land use bylaw is the mapping component. Whoops. One more. The map is a pretty important piece of the land use bylaw. It usually makes up a Schedule B of the land use bylaw. And this is, in my experience, typically where you'll find most landowners and residents go to first. They want to go find their property and be able to see what has changed in terms of the land use bylaw. So it's important to understand that, and council recalls seeing part of this graphic. It's in the what has changed infographic, but we did a consolidation of districts, and when you see an existing district that's been consolidated into a proposed, we haven't characterized that as a change in land use. It's essentially a change in name of the land use, but we worked really hard to make sure that this conversion meant that the permitted and discretionary uses you would have had in one of the existing districts is consistent with what's in the proposed district. So you shouldn't look at this and say, I've lost certain ability that I didn't have before. That was our intent. That's the idea behind this conversion. So when we talk about what has changed and when we look at the map, these ones, when it's a conversion, you won't see a reference to it being changed. It's only where we changed a zoning or a district from one to a different. So from a example, commercial to a residential. That's a change in land use. That has been flagged in our map. And as per the attachment in the report, this represents the proposed land use district map. And any parcel you see with a black dash line around it is a parcel that has contemplated a change in what their land use zone is compared to what it is currently. I don't have the percentages off the top of my head, but I'd suggest that probably a good portion of these, 30–40%, are changing the open direct control district that we have currently in town to a conventional zone. The exercise we went through to do that is we looked at the existing approvals on that particular property and made sure that whatever was approved under that direct control was consistent with what that conventional zone was. So again, that principle of making sure that we're not taking away a right that was already there. The caveat on that is we went through this a number of times and spent lots of hours on this, and we may have missed the mark. So again, this engagement opportunity is a chance for residents to go through and take a look at that and then say, hey, you know what? I think you missed the mark. I did actually lose something here. Can we talk about that? So that's what we're hoping for. The cool thing is that this is an interactive tool that'll be available on the project website. So I'm going to go to that now because demonstrating how this is going to work is going to be pretty important. And I want to draw council's attention to some of these areas that have changed just to, now Giles, if I click on this, is it going to take me, will I have to go open up a new page?
Yeah,
will it
we'll
open?
need to stop the share.
Oh, okay. Then I'll have to go to the a different share.
Correct, yeah. Do you have it up in a different one?
Let's see. Did it open up here? It didn't. Should have tested that. Okay. That's okay. We'll have a different way, I think. Oh, maybe that's working. There it goes. Okay. So now if I go back here and share it, right?
Correct.
Okay. Right here. Okay, got it. Whoop. How come it didn't go where I wanted it to go? I guess it doesn't want to let us share a web page, Giles?
There it is.
There it is. It's there? Okay, good. Perfect. I just have to be patient, I guess. Except for it's not showing on this screen for some reason.
Let's just do one more thing here then. Let's just go. Just gonna hit that, so route. There you go.
Okay. Thank you, Giles. My apologies for the technical difficulties, but this is worth waiting for, I promise. So, conceivably with this tool, a link to this on the website. Residents and landowners will be able to navigate to their property and see what's changed. So if we scroll anywhere into the map, you will see a tooltip that comes up as you hover over a parcel of land. And it'll say what the current land use district is and what the proposed is. If I click on that parcel, it should bring up another box that allows me to automatically, I didn't get a chance to test this, so let's hope this works. I was told it was ready. If not, it'll be ready tomorrow. This should take me to a PDF of the current land use district, and it did. So I can read this and see what it is today, and then I can go, if I'm done with that, and I want to see what the proposed is, I can go back and click on what the proposed is, and hopefully it'll bring up the new. So for a user, a landowner, their map is where their property is their what's dear to them, so they can go find their property and quickly, without having to go to a bunch of different places, take a quick look at what's changed for their particular property. So this will be available on the website tomorrow. I won't say exactly when, but our plan is to get all this stuff posted tomorrow after this committee of the whole. What I want to take a bit of time is just to show some of these areas that have changed, and I'm hoping that council and the landowners will take some time to look at these as well, because obviously we went through an exercise based on our context, our history, and what we know about these parcels, but maybe there's some things that we don't know in history. A lot of the parcels in this area were direct control, so we've moved them to the rural residential district, which fits that area quite well. There'll be some examples like this one here. This was a residential, but it's actually a church. So we change that to a public service district because that makes sense. So that's a change, but it's probably a change that would be considered to be positive. This area was direct control as well. Left the big parcels, these two parcels of direct control, and the reason we did that is because there was approvals on those properties that included a residential land use as well as an industrial. So our conventional zone, our business industrial zone, won't allow a residential property on it. So that would have made it non-compliant. So For now, we've left it direct control, but again, through this process, if there's inputs and commentary that thinks otherwise, we can certainly look at doing that. Another area for council to think about, currently this, I can't remember which trailer park this is, Julia, Cedars. We've got this zone to C2, and you know, the planning documents, the MDP, I think, identifies this area for future commercial. There probably needs to be consideration for maybe zoning this back to a residential or the residential mobile home district that's been created. And I guess my rationale for suggesting that is that there's lots of commercial land along the highway that's vacant. There's actually quite a bit of available commercial land in the town of Edson. I think we'd like to probably see some of that land be absorbed. I think if I'm a commercial, I'm not a commercial business owner, but I probably prefer to be on the highway than a block off. So I guess thinking about these residents who live here now, they don't comply with the zoning, current zoning. Maybe we just put it back to a residential, and when the MDP is redone, all this can be reconsidered in more of a planning context of what makes sense for the community. So just an area to think about and look at. I wanted to show this is the residential mobile home district of this color here. You'll also notice that the RG, General District, also allows for mobile homes because there are existing mobile homes, or sorry, manufactured homes is what we're calling them, in other outside of sort of these conventional areas. So we wanted to make sure we didn't remove those rights. But one thing to note about the RG district is mobile home is discretionary? No. The way it's worded is if they exist today, they're okay. But if you remove it, you have to replace it with a conventional home, not a manufactured. So that's something for council and the public to think about. Maybe there's provisions that we need to put in to replace them. But so they can exist today, they're fine. But if they're removed, a stick-built home would be the option. Another thing of note, you'll see a lot of changes along the highway between C2 and C3. We took the position that the C3 zoning is for some of your larger parcels that are sort of on the west end of town once you get out of sort of the urban feel. And also for the big box stores like Walmart, Sobeys, some of the bigger vehicle dealerships are the C3. And then all the other smaller parcels that are along the highways and 3rd Ave are C2. So they're changed, but really the uses.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
The availability uses haven't.
How do I cue you up?
Sorry to stop you.
Yeah, that's okay.
GM Kitlitz. If you just want to back up, because you were mentioning the manufactured homes.
Yeah.
But what you have highlighted there, those aren't manufactured homes on that.
Sure. So I'll give you, I'll go to an area to give you a better example. So in Glenwood, this is a perfect example. So this is proposed to be RG.
Yeah.
And there are, in certain parts of this neighborhood, manufactured homes, right?
Yeah.
And so they were permitted under the existing bylaw. Under this zoning, they're still permitted to be there. But if I removed it, what this says now is that you would have to replace it with a conventional home.
So what you're saying is if that property owner wanted to say, remove a 1970s mobile home with a new one, they would not be permitted to do so.
And I think that's the way it's worded right now. So I think that's something to be aware of. And maybe there needs to be provision that says you can replace it with a like, but you couldn't enhance maybe. So that's just something to consider, right? Because I don't think we have a provision for enhancement, do we?
It follows underneath the section of the MGA.
Right.
And under the MGA, the entire, sorry guys. So the provisions for an existing non-conforming, which is what that would be considered, under the MGA, the provision states that the non-conforming structure is allowed to exist and can have slight modifications and some replacements. But if it was to burn to 75% or more, or to be removed entirely and vacant for more than 6 months, then it would have to be replaced and become conformant with the existing district.
So just to follow up to that, I do have concerns with that. Would there be a provision where they could ask for a variance to replace it with a with a home that's similar in nature to what's there currently. Because some of these residences have been there for a long, long time. So, you know, I think, you know, council would have to have, I think, a little bit more discussion about that, but that would be a concern to me if I'm currently owning a property and now you're telling me I can't have what I have there now.
And I think that's through you, Deputy Mayor. That's the reason why I brought that up specifically here tonight, is because that is a provision that we may want to think about and get some feedback on. Certainly, you could put provisions to say that you could probably replace it with a newer version of the same size, but maybe you wouldn't be able to double it or something like that. But certainly, that's why I wanted to bring it to the attention, because that's one of the things with condensing some of these zones into multiple into fewer. You get some of these nuances that we've discovered. So understanding them and being aware of them and thinking about how we might deal with those is important. So does that help? Does that help understanding what we're doing? Okay.
Okay, I just had a question. If council has questions like that, do you want me just to allow them through? Okay, because, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't sure at the end. And, okay, and then Mr. Hanlon, you had a question, or was that accident? Okay. Okay. I don't know what's going on, because, nope. Okay, let's try that. No?
Touch your speak button. There it is.
Got him. To the chair here, I mean, I know what the mayor was saying, because when I was on council, I sat on the subdivision appeal board with Brian Boyce and these guys, and up in Glenwood, they had a fire up there, and they had to come to us and wanted to put another trailer back on there. And we had said at the time, no, you can't, you have to put something better or bigger on there. They got some misinformation from the insurance company saying they could put the same thing back on, so they did put the same thing back on, which didn't conform to what our bylaw said in that. They had to end up pull it off, and then they put something better on there, which was almost like a manufactured home in that day. So that's what you're saying they could probably do now? Because if they have a big trailer, say a 5-year-old manufactured home in there, and it burns, they can.
This current version is specifically clear on that. It says it can exist today. If it doesn't exist anymore, it needs to comply with the bylaw, which wouldn't be a new manufactured home. So again, that's why I bring it to the attention for tonight, is so that that can be thought about and contemplated. And if we have to consider maybe a little more relaxation there, we can come back and do that. So, right.
We specifically state that we, in section 4.12 of the proposed bylaw, it says that we specifically treat them in accordance with the act.
Yeah. So then, yeah.
I unfortunately don't have that section of the act written down, but it is there about non-conforming uses, existing non-conforming uses. So instead of having the, like previously in the current bylaw that we use, we have that section of the MGA outlined a couple of different times on how we deal with existing non-conforming uses. And instead of doing that, because when the MGA changes, then we have to make changes to our land use bylaw, we just refer to the act specifically so that you would go there to find those regulations.
And Ms. Darling quoted it pretty well the first time she talked about it. The one thing I will note, though, the Act does provide the opportunity for municipalities to include in their land use bylaw provisions to vary those provisions. And we did include in this version of the bylaw, under the variance section, there is ability for the Development Authority to give a 10% variance to a legal non-conforming use. So that's where we started as a starting point. Essentially, they'd be able to add 10% of square footage to that building as a renovation or an addition under those provisions. So, yeah.
I have a question to you, Mr. Kitlitz. With the modular homes, because some of the ones that are in Glenwood and larger lots, where there would have been an old 12 or 14 wide, some of these new modulars are more than 10%. So as long as they have the option, because as Councillor Bevins brought up, if your home burnt to the ground, you went to replace it, you'd be hard pressed to say, well, I was allowed a modular home and now I'm not. So as long as we have the variant, I'd be very in agreement with it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, again, I mentioned the direct controls. These parcels that were surrounding 50th Street, Main Street, a lot of these were direct control, just open direct control. Again, we looked at them, looked at the existing approvals on the lots and either changed it to the residential land use, or if it was a commercial, I think this is the dentist office, to a neighborhood commercial, based on the approvals on site. So getting rid of some of these direct controls. I'm not 100% sure what the rationale for doing all these direct controls was years ago, but as council is aware, they are cumbersome for the landowners, because everything has to come back to council for decision, whether it's a sign, a fence, or a brand new house. That doesn't really align with the principles of this bylaw, so we think that going back to the conventionals for now is appropriate. And again, the MDP does probably need an update here, and I think going through that document, you can really focus on which areas of the community you really want to do some redevelopment on. I think the existing MDP has a lot of redevelopment zones, pretty aggressive on its redevelopment zones, so I think there probably could be some rethinking of where the best spots to do that are.
Councillor Chechka.
Thanks. Through the chair to Mr. Kitlitz. So for all these direct control lots that you're going to put to what they already kind of are supposed to be, and that what we kind of intend them to be when it comes here, are all those landowners going to get like a notice, or how are we communicating with them to tell them like, hey, something's happening with your land. If you are not liking this, you need to speak up now.
With some patience, I'm going to get to the notification
Oh,
public
okay.
hearing at
Sorry.
the end here, because there's
Oh.
some tidbits there, so bear with me, thank you. So that's what this area is here. A lot of the changes here are those direct controls. This is one that I want to draw council attention to, because this one has the potential for some more discussion as well. So there are some concerns that some of the residential properties along 4th Ave are in this pickle where they can't improve their properties, they can't sell them, their own commercial, and they're struggling with that. So we did look at the overlay provisions, and there is some flexibility there. But what we thought we'd try is this 2 blocks on 4th Ave between, I think it's 46th and 48th, I think. We did that same approach. We saw, these are residential land uses, they're houses, let's put them back to residential. Again, with that thought that I recognize that there's been some desire for councils and past councils to see the whole corridor as commercial. Maybe we can rethink that in this particular area. If they were a commercial land use, we kept them, and this one I think is direct control still, because it was quite a unique approval. I think it had both commercial and residential, so we took that same approach to this area. So another area that'll need some focus, and hopefully we get some input on the thoughts on that particular area. A couple more quick ones here I just wanted to show. One is in Hillendale. There's a bank of properties up on the north side here that were all direct control. We've changed those to the RG. The RG zoning allows for a multitude of different housing types: single family, semi-detached, duplex, even some multi-attached. So we think that that's a much more open opportunity for the lots up there. Another one that I think is pretty unique and maybe needs some thought. This is just north of the Tim Hortons and Wendy's. I think these parcels have been for sale for a while. They're currently zoned highway commercial. Again, thinking of how much commercial land we have along the highway, maybe there's an opportunity to rethink this for some higher density residential to support our commercial development and other citizens in town. So these are just some of the ones that have changed, and I just wanted to draw some attention to them. So again, there's some awareness of some of the things we're proposing, and we can get some quality feedback on what's going on. So again, this tool will be available tomorrow. I encourage council and the public to poke around and take a look. And again, Julie and I spent the bulk of the time working on this. We've spent a lot of hours in here. The more you look at this stuff, sometimes it's really easy to miss things and overlook things that seem pretty obvious to most, and we may have overlooked them. So we won't be offended. We certainly hope to get feedback and find things that we've missed or maybe took the wrong approach on. So I will try to get out of this now. Unless there are any other questions or anything you wanted to see, we're okay there. Okay. I will go back quickly to my PowerPoint.
Councillor Chechka.
Through the chair to Mr. Kitlitz. Regarding the residential lots along the highway there on 4th Ave, between the A&W and the creek, So when I read through this, it's, if I remember correctly, and I just want to confirm that, so if those change back to residential, they're held to the higher standard of that highway overlay, the Highway 16 overlay, or how, so what I'm getting at is, some of those houses are super cute and have been very well kept and very well maintained, and, you know, I think bring a really nice ambiance to our highway corridor. Some others, not so much. So it's the others that I'm more concerned about.
Yeah, through you, Deputy Mayor, I think that's a good question. I don't know that we've really applied that lens. I know we did take out some of the architectural provisions out of the overlay, the ones that were a bit more stringent maybe.
Okay.
We did remove some of those. So certainly a good question, and we can certainly go back and look at that. And if there's a will to maybe put some provisions in there for higher standards there, that's certainly something that we can contemplate.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the mapping or the bylaw itself before I go on these last two bits just about on the notification of the public hearing? Okay. So notification, so we have an advertising bylaw that council has passed. The act allows municipalities to pass bylaws to deal with advertising of bylaws and public hearings. It doesn't require us to do a mail out to every landowner. We can do that. That's certainly an option if the will of council is to make sure that everybody gets a hand-delivered letter that talks about what's changed on their property. That's a big exercise, but it certainly can be done if that's the will of council. The other thing we could do is just go and look at the mapping and all those parcels that have the black dotted line around them that are actually a change that contemplates some sort of maybe impactful change to their property. We could just mail notification to those. And then we use the other means of the advertising bylaw, which are our website, it could be the newspaper, it could be social media, all the other means that bylaw guides us for advertising. So those are some options that council may want to provide some guidance on for us, because as we get prepared for the public hearing, we wanted to know how we want to notify for that. So the last thing I wanted to, well, two more things. The public hearing itself. So typically, our typical practice, we give first reading to bylaws in council chambers, and then we host a public hearing. I've done a lot of land use bylaws in my career. I think this is my 7th one. I've learned some lessons, some hard ones and some good ones. And we have the option to actually hold the public hearing before even giving first reading to this bylaw. We checked, our procedure bylaw doesn't hamper us. The Act provides us with that option. Basically, the Act says the Municipal Government Act, says that you have to have a public hearing before second reading. I've listed some pros and cons. The cons, obviously, is it's not typical for our process. It's different for our public and for our council to stick handle. But I think some of the pros are and I've dealt with this in previous land use bylaws. You'll hear commentary from landowners and public that, well, council already gave first reading of this bylaw, so it's a done deal. So I don't even know why you're asking me for input, because they've already decided. And that's a reality that occurs. The other thing is when you give first reading and you go to a public hearing, sometimes, especially with a land use bylaw, council's going to get a lot of feedback, and there's going to be some changes. Every one of those changes after first reading has to be redlined, documented precisely, and shared, which is fine. That's doable. But the more of those amendments you get, the more cumbersome it is to track all those things. And then finally, I guess the advantage of doing the public hearing first is council has the opportunity to hear all the feedback. All the engagement's done, the public hearing's done. They've opened up the discussion on it, and now they're ready to make a decision on the bylaw. So, thoughts on that? Happy to hear the thoughts from council.
Councillor Persicny.
Yeah, through the deputy mayor to Mr. Kitlitz. I don't want to go to first reading in a public hearing. I think an open house or some kind of a format where we can invite people. I also think that if we utility bills, because those go to property owners, telling people about they can come look at the changes, some directions there. Those flyers, every time I open my water bill, I get a flyer from the town on something. It's a great way of communicating with people. It's direct to our ratepayers. Definitely don't want it to go to first reading and then have to do a pile of amendments. I'd rather us do another working group and get the feedback from the community. I know you're going to have some. And I think council's going to even have some feedback on some of these areas that we've talked about this evening. So I definitely would like to have some more open dialogue with our residents, especially since it's such a major undertaking of all of our land use bylaws.
Okay, Counselor Taylor.
Yeah, through the chair to Mr. Kitlitz, I concur with what Councilor Position said. I'll go one step further and to say the idea of an open house is sort of maybe a one-on-one gathering than a sort of a more formal setting, public hearing. And I guess in a public hearing, you can record what they're saying, but I would also hate to see someone get timed out when they're making sort of good comments, and hopefully we can give some allowances to time within that. I agree, public hearing and or open house in terms of first, so that then when we go to first reading, it is, it's almost in its final draft or a final version. So those are my comments with that.
Okay, Counselor Chechka.
Thanks. Through the chair to Mr. Kitlitz, I also agree with Councillor Positioning and Councillor Taylor. In addition, the letters, I think it's really important, those black outlined parcels, that each of those landowners receives a letter saying something is changing on your property. Like this is your time to act as now, and these are the dates you can come, and if you have questions and whatever. I don't know if the whole town needs a letter. I think that might just get... the important things might get missed, but the people who have something changing on their property that's proposed, I think it's important that they have a personalized letter. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you to the staff for all their work on this. This has been a major undertaking. I really like the idea of having an open house first where you can have some conversation. It's not actually more formal. I think it's less formal than a public hearing. I think to have those conversations, to get that feedback, and then we can certainly make some adjustments before we go into the public hearing process, and then do that final, or do that first reading. We have done a ton of work trying to engage this far, and I don't want us screwing this up at the end, because this has been not only a lot of work, but a lot of expense to get to this part, and our focus has always been to reduce red tape and ensure that the public has an option or the ability to provide feedback. I also agree with the comments here. I think the real big focus is on those black line properties. To change a property from high density commercial to high density residential, that's a major change. That property owner needs to be sure to have feedback. If they're open to it, that's what they want, then great. If not, then we need to know that so we don't make that change. Very sensitive to people who have invested in these properties to ensure that they know what the changes are. And, some of them will be really happy with some of these changes, and there might be some concerns that we need to ensure that we are aware of before we start that formal process, because, as you mentioned, very cumbersome to start making amendments after first reading.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Moore.
Through the Deputy Mayor to Clayton, does this new legislation, new bylaws, still recognize grandfathering clauses? And if so, does it allow for future grandfathering clauses?
So through you, Deputy Mayor, so very interesting term that I've heard throughout my career. There's nowhere in legislation, municipal government legislation, or that includes the word grandfathering. Ms. Darling talked about it a bit earlier. It's legal nonconforming is what's used in the Municipal Government Act. And basically what it means is, just real quick, if I got approval to build a house under this bylaw and a new bylaw adopted by council says I can no longer build that type of house, I already have an approval. So that's a legal use that I was approved for. So that's a legal nonconforming use that can exist for eternity. But as soon as it doesn't exist, there's a new bylaw in place, and the rules say now you have to build in compliance with this new bylaw. That's what the grandfathering is. It's not grandfathering. I know but that's essentially what the legislation has provided to deal with this nuance of a new bylaw coming into play that may make properties non-compliant. As long as you have a development permit that says you're allowed to have that, you're in great shape to continue to have that. Does that answer your question?
Councillor Persichny.
Yeah, through the Deputy Mayor to Mr. Kitlitz. Further to Councillor Moore's comment, is there provisions or availability, and it maybe touch on to what the Mayor said earlier. For example, you have a property that has an existing 1962 trailer, and the resident wants to upgrade it to a new trailer. Let's use Glenwood for an example. Is there provisions to allow that existing landowner to update his non-conforming? Because nothing worse than saying, well, you can't do anything with it. If it burns down, you can't replace it. And it becomes ghettoized and they just don't do anything with it because they know they can't do anything with it. So I'd hate for us to do something like that.
Yeah, and through you, Deputy Mayor, I think we probably could stiffen up that wording within this draft. I think basically what it says is you can have it, it exists, it's legal non-conforming, but if it's gone, you have to replace it to conform. And the RG zone doesn't allow for a new mobile home to be done. So I think from what I'm hearing, and it makes sense, you'd have wording that says, if I have this size of a manufactured home today, it's 1962 using your example, I'm gonna update it to a new, as long as it's the same dimensions and size and square footage, it shouldn't be a problem, right? But we'd have to put language in there to address that, 'cause I don't think it's 100% clear right now.
Your comment about the same dimensions, modular homes have came a long ways from a 12 wide to 24 wide. So I think we have to go farther and make sure the property, so if it's, let's say, in Glenwood, if a house of a certain of 1,800 square feet fits there, we allow a modular of the same size, not go bigger, but to be comparable to what's allowed in the lot in the stick build. If we can add that in as well. Because I think right now it reads 10% bigger, and that would be,
So sorry, Deputy Mayor, so what you're suggesting or what you're hoping to see is that if I have a conventional stick-built home, I can go back to a manufactured home?
no. Or maybe I'd ask, so if I have an older modular home on the lot, and like a lot of these lots are big, or even through some of them we refer to as Trailer Town over by the old Evergreens, where there is old modular homes there, that they would be allowed to build something of, if it was a stick build. So let's say in Glenwood where you have huge lots, there's a little mobile, we're telling them you can only put a 12 wide back in there. But in essence, if you were building a stick build and it could be, 1,800 square feet, allow the same size modular to be replaced with it.
Okay. Go ahead, Julia.
I can speak to that, Deputy Mayor. So we've actually changed the definition of manufactured home in our proposed bylaw. In the current bylaw, we define a manufactured home as a certain type of mobile home, and we have several different types, including modular. So if you read the definitions, manufactured home is something that's attached to a chassis, very specifically, and we've taken away the single-family dwelling definition and just replaced it with dwelling, which means anything that somebody lives in. So we've kind of removed that problem that some people have where there's a modular home or a double wide or whatever term we want to use to call them, and we've gone with best practice terms to alleviate that problem, so that when we're talking about manufactured homes and not allowing them, we're specifically talking about something that's attached to a chassis that had to be towed there.
So that's a really good point by Ms. Darling. We're less descriptive on what that is now, so it actually does provide a bit more flexibility based on those definitions. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Taylor. Oh, geez, right, hang on a second. Uh-oh. Try that.
Yeah, through the deputy mayor to administration. With the conversation of manufactured homes, conversations around Glenwood with the lot sizes that are bigger is one thing. If you were to sort of replace it with a stick build, fine. But in some of the areas, well, it's about 54th, but by Evergreens, some of those lot sizes are very small. I don't even know how you would even get a stick build there. So ensuring there's allowances for some expansion is fine, but keeping it a manufactured home is we should have that wording in there. There could be some discussion. Sorry.
Aren't those RMHs?
Yes.
That's a
Sorry.
manufactured home residential district. It's different.
Oh, it's different than what we were talking. So what was the area you were highlighting then?
So when you get a chance to when you get a chance to look at the map, pay attention to the ones that are RG there. Take a look at those ones, because there are examples of RG lots scattered throughout town, and some of them do have manufactured homes on them, and they're in a neighborhood that's primarily your typical residential, right? So there's the odd ones. So again, and again, this is the will of council and the public. If you added that as a permitted use, that would mean that you could tear down your stick-built home and put up a manufactured home. And maybe that's okay. Maybe we're okay with that in our community. But that's what it would mean if you made it permitted. Or we put in provisions to say you can replace with like or to some sort of extent. So those are the options that are available.
And then with the discussion of the variance, right now it's 10, and of course there's a discussion of what we could make that. and what could be appropriate. And I struggle with that, because 10%, going by what Councilor Chenard said, that's not a lot. It's not, it won't give you much. So I would struggle, and maybe I would need to see mapping of different sizes of what could be appropriate to meet sort of modern sort of manufactured homes, whether it is a 15 or 20%, I don't know. I would maybe need to see that and sort of adopt to that practice. 10%, that's not very much at all. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor. Gotcha.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, just to reiterate, manufactured homes or modulars, depending on the term you're using, they've come a long way where you can't even tell in some cases that they are modular homes. So I think there needs to be a little bit more discussion around that. My concern is we're in a time of there isn't a lot of affordability right now, and the housing costs are exponentially higher than what we've seen previously. So to impact somebody's ability to replace their home if, say, they have a fire or some other tragic event, or they want to get rid of that 1964 mobile that kind of looks like it's falling apart into something that's nicer, I would really hate for us to hamper that ability for that person to upgrade that property to something that they can actually afford by pushing them into a stick-built home, which we know is really hard to build right now. Depending on, and this is more particularly in the Glenwood neighborhood where you already have a mixed use, where you can actually make it look, a modular can look exactly like a stick-built home nowadays. It's come a long, long way in many ways. So that's just my general feedback, which I think we've heard we need to do a little bit more work on this particular area.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chechka.
Thanks through the chair to administration. So I'm going to steer away from the mobile homes here. So when we have where we've combined two different land uses now into one, and there's some kind of minor, just little glitchy things about it that don't line up exactly. So explain how do we make them, I guess, meet the needs of the bylaw and what is in here. Is there something that triggers that, right now, and that's okay because they've been in that way? Do they just always stay non-conforming? Or if they want like a new development permit, or maybe they sell the property, I'm not sure what would trigger it. But is there something that triggers it and says, okay, now you have to actually comply with the standard that is listed?
No, through you, Deputy Mayor, if I'm understanding your question, Councillor Chushkin, no, if you don't do anything to your property, you're totally fine. You've got a permit, you're legal. They call it legal non-conforming because you comply. With an old approval. It only when you want to improve your property where this comes into effect. If you decide to tear everything down and rebuild from scratch, you build to the new bylaw and then you get an approval and you comply, right? The other thing I want to draw attention to is we've added some other provisions in this bylaw, specifically around setbacks, I think it is, right, Julia? That even with this new bylaw, on an existing property, the setbacks are given some variance, right? I think that clause, I think it's in the variance authority. Yeah, I think there's another one. I can't remember where it was. But we put in some of these provisions that allow for some of this legal non-conforming stuff to be a little less impactful. I think it's in the administrative. Yeah, right up here. Yeah. 4.1. There's a provision in there about, is it setbacks or? Yeah. So it's saying if it was existing already. So there are some things that help with that, but legal non-conforming exists. It happens quite often when bylaws are rewritten. Yeah, but we have tried to put in some flexibility there for that.
Okay.
Councillor Persichny.
Yeah, through the Deputy Mayor to probably Julia. I just want to make sure I understand it correctly, and I'm going to go right back to manufactured homes. And the reason is, if I'm reading this correctly, and just correct me if I'm wrong, make sure I understand it correctly. So manufactured home is literally on a trailer, it's on a metal frame, has wheels, you can't put it on blocks, you put a skirt on, it's done. Now, dwelling, I could have a foundation, bring in two halves of a house, plunk them on that foundation. That's called a dwelling. That would work in any of our regular general district areas.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So okay, I think I understand it then. Because there is parts in other neighborhoods where you've had that where you wouldn't tell that the house came in on a trailer once it's done.
Yeah.
Right. So I there's a, because we're mixing up manufactured homes as ones that are manufactured in a factory and then shipped out here. But you're talking about ones that literally, they don't like where they live. They pull up the skirt, they slap on the wheels, and they tow it out.
That's right.
And the really old ones still have the hitch on them. Right. Okay.
Flower boxes.
Yeah. Okay. I understand it then, because I was confused, because I think we were having confusion
Yeah,
on that.
yeah.
That, oh, you can't bring in a double wide. Well, you can if you put it on a foundation, right? And even then, it's not on a trailer anymore. It's being put on place, and it's
Dwelling.
acceptable to dwelling. That opens up dwelling is quite a bit far ranging, right? It doesn't mean you have to stick build it on site.
That's right. Yeah.
So that opens up a pile of it, right?
That's, yeah.
Because to me, it was like, oh, yeah, you can't bring in the two halves or the one half and put it on your house. It's different. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And that was conscious, because I think at the end of the day, your home is your home. Who might have defined what your home is, right? So it's a dwelling. How you choose to build it and install it there is on you. So that was purposeful. Okay.
Oh, Counselor Taylor. Oops, what the hell went, hang on a second. Try that.
Yeah, through the Deputy Mayor, just want to talk about, oh man, now I forgot my train of thought. So I've written all my notes here, hold on. Talking about direct control. So we moved away, you said about 30, 40%, give or take?
It's a guess, yeah. We haven't looked
Okay.
at the data, but yeah.
The ones that are kept, the ones we're reasoning, rationale, like in terms of the ones that were kept. Obviously, we can fool around with the map a little bit, maybe get a clearer picture. But just obviously, direct control very cumbersome. I think a few months ago we had a resident whose house had burned down, and it was under direct control, and they were coming to us, and they have to wait till the first or third Tuesday for us to decide whether they can do something, and that's frustrating. So I'm glad we sort of moved away in terms of those rural lots, but just wondering what was kept and rationale and reasoning behind it.
Through your Deputy Mayor, so what we tried to do in our analysis was to look and say, because if under the direct control, basically I could come and ask council to do anything I wanted on that parcel, and if council approves it, it's approved. The challenge with that is if it had two uses on it. So as the example I gave in that one parcel, it had a single family dwelling and a business. Well, none of our conventional zones allow to have both those uses on it. So for now, we've left it as direct control, because if we change it to business industrial, well, their house is now non-conforming. It's not, so now they can't do anything in their house. We've added a restriction to them. Certainly the DCC is cumbersome from a process and approvals place, but at least it doesn't encumber their property. So that's what we try to do with all those. Any that are left, we took that look and said, this doesn't really fit into a conventional. Let's leave it at that for now. Yeah. And then at some point in the future, through amendments, you could relook at some of those. Maybe you create a zone that allows for some of that mixed stuff, if it's appropriate. But in this particular analysis, at this juncture, that was the approach we took. Okay, just one more thing, Mr. Deputy Mayor, before, if there's no other questions, just want to talk about a little bit what's going to be on the project webpage tomorrow. Obviously, we'll have a bit of an update on the project. There's going to be the survey. If you recall, in October, we brought the third round of engagement materials to council to take a look at. There's an online survey. There's the infographic that shows some of the big things that changed. There's the draft of the land use bylaw that people can go navigate through and read. There's the mapping tool that I showed you. And we're also going to include an email address so that folks that have questions or feedback can send it directly to that special email address, so we can track any input that we receive. So again, very much, I don't know exactly when we'll have that up tomorrow, but that's our goal tomorrow, is to get all this stuff up and running off the project page. So again, encourage council, members of the public landowners to dig in there and take a look. This is a great opportunity to see how we did. So thank you.
Okay. I have one more question if you're done with that. Page 76, parking, we discussed, and I'm thinking in areas that have restricted parking, example, Main Street, where we're going to do it variance there.
So During the council workshop, there was some talk about really reducing the parking requirements. I'm going to say that we probably haven't gone as far as maybe the feedback we received from council on that. We have provided variance provisions, 10 and 20% in certain situations. We did sort of an analysis after that and did some comparisons, and our parking was actually less than a lot of the comparators around. So kind of left them where they are with some of those variance provisions for the development authority to provide some variances at the application stage. So again, this is a great opportunity for council to take a look at that. And if we haven't moved far enough towards the reduction, then by all means, we're happy to take that feedback.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Prusitchny.
Yeah, through the deputy mayor to Mr. Kitlitz. On the opportunity for people to email in, are you going to share those with council, or is that just something you're going to keep to yourselves and
No,
submit?
to you, Deputy Mayor, I think we're going to keep a very much so a log of all the input we receive, and we'll obviously respond, and we're going to keep a record of all that. So it'll be available. Council wants to see that. We will make sure we share, but we will keep a log and a record of all that input and anything that we contemplate. So for sure.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So just to Mr. Kitlitz, just for some, I guess, clarification. So have you received enough feedback in terms of next steps, in terms of the letter going out and arranging an open house? Or do you need something more formal? Obviously, we can't make motions in this meeting, but the other point to that is I think we're only open for 2 weeks for feedback. Is that?
I think the ARFD, we're looking at March 1st to keep this particular third round of engagement to March 1st, yeah.
Okay, so that'd be 2 to 3 weeks. I do think that might be a little tight, but if we're gonna have an open house afterwards, then I'd certainly would be open to that. Just I wanna make sure that this is a major change for our community. So I just wanna make sure we get all that feedback before we make, enter that first reading. Cause I don't wanna end up in a first reading situation where we are now trying to make changes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chechka.
Thanks. Through the chair to admin. The infographic on page, it's the one on the opposite side of this. Yes, it's the one on the opposite side. So you kind of listed like some highlights of, some major changes. Is there any way that you can kind of list the parking a little bit more in detail about what the variations are now, just so people can understand that a little bit better with the parking? I'm not sure if that's how easy that is to list that. I know some that pointed out to, or that kind of popped out to me was that now the development officer can, if a business wants to have, like, I'll pick on Main Street here, if they want to be able to, utilize that space and they don't have the parking, but, maybe they can share it with a theater or something, because the theater isn't, usually during that time that you can kind of like share the spaces with another business that isn't maybe having their peak hours at that time. And I don't know if that was quite able, if that was a variance that was available before.
Okay, so that's your Deputy Mayor. So I think you're asking just for some more specifics on some of these parking changes.
On just the parking, because that's
Just a little more detail?
it's been a contentious issue
Okay.
at moments, so.
I think we can probably do that. This graphic's been, if it gets a day later, I think that's fine. It's probably not the most important.
Oh, no,
And
no.
so if we have to do some updates and it might take an extra day to get it posted, we will.
Okay.
We can do that. But I think we can add some clarity on those. The other thing about the parking I wanted to mention is that we haven't reduced them a lot, but what we did do is the existing bylaw is very, I'm not sure what the right word is. It's not specific on, the parking just says commercial. And this is the parking release for commercial, right? The proposed one goes in to say, here's what it is for a retail store, and here's what it is for a restaurant, right? So that helps.
They line up with our uses.
Yeah, they line up with their uses, whereas before it didn't. So that does help. I mean, all these things that have done are going to provide some benefit. But again, after the review, maybe council and the public and landowners think we need to go a bit more, and that's fine. But yeah.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the Deputy Mayor, Mr. Kitlitz. So when we look at also engagement, whether it be engaging in an open house or that sort of thing, and we will do our typical advertising. Are we also looking at perhaps targeting certain individuals, whether it be realtors or land developers and things like that, and getting specific input? You know, it's always good to hear from people, but sometimes people within the business world, within that world, are good people to hear. I don't know in terms of they said this is your 7th land use bylaw. Is that something you've typically looked at or done or would recommend?
So I guess here's what I'll share, I guess, through you, Deputy Mayor. So I appreciate the council's desire to do some more engagement with the residents on this. That's totally fine within their realm. But I think one of the things that I caution is we've already went through, this is be our 3rd round of engagement, which is part of the project plan, right? So we've planned for that, we've budgeted for that, and we've done that, and we've committed to that. The realtors and those that you speak of, we engaged those folks earlier on in the process. We're calling this the 3rd round of engagement, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but if we have to, we'll rewrite the whole bylaw if that's what the engagement says. But we're hoping at this point it's just a validation of the journey we're on. I'm not suggesting for a second that we're not going to change anything, but there's also some caution about, are we going to reopen the whole book again and just have to start from scratch? So and I don't want this to come across the wrong way. I think it's important, the engagement is important. If council, it's the will of council to do this open house, we're game to do it. But we also have to be mindful of the budget and the process we're in, and we don't have much budget left for this project, so these are extras. So hopefully that answered your question. We have engaged those folks. We haven't contemplated doing another special mail out, but again, we're at the will of council's direction on this. That's what they want. And on that note, Deputy Mayor, if you will, the mayor asked if we're clear. So I'm just going to reiterate what we've heard, just to make sure that we do have some clarity. As the mayor mentioned, council can't pass motions in this forum. But I think what we're hearing is probably not within this time frame for 3rd engagement, because it might be tight to do, but we want to have a public open house, informal public space for residents to interact with council and staff on this bylaw. Okay, so that's something we'll have to coordinate and find time for. Trying to think what the other ones were. A little bit more detail on parking changes. What am I missing?
Manufactured homes,
Manufactured homes.
if they can replace them in kind.
Okay, that's just feedback though. That's feedback we're going to collect through this process, and we'll make adjustments later. Is there anything else that we wanted to? The letters, right? Sorry, thank you. So letters to the parcels that are changed and signified by the black line. The one thing I want to clarify on that is we're at a state today, right? So administration's made some assumptions, or not assumptions, but took some best guesses on these changes. We're going to get some feedback. After this feedback, March 1st, let's say some of these change and we change them back to conventional, or there's some changes. We're only going to do this mail out notification for the public hearing when we're at our sort of close to end state, not continually out through this open house or this rest of this engagement. I want clarity on that, because we could do 2 or 3 more mail outs right now. My assumption is it's just when we're ready to schedule a public hearing, that's when those mail outs go out, not today. Is that clear? Is that correct?
Councillor Taylor, you have something new?
Yeah, through the deputy mayor, just something new in terms of definitions, and this will tie into sort of what parking when I get to it. Libraries would fall under recreation facility indoor. It's not specifically mentioned within the definition, but I couldn't find where it would fall, where that would fall. And
In the parking table?
well, no, not in park, just in the definitions, and then the second question is gonna just relate to parking, I guess.
While Ms. Darling's looking for that, I don't know if I got an answer to that question. In terms of the mail outs to the affected parcels, is it just for the public hearing notification, or is this from this point on? 'Cause that's a pretty big difference.
Okay, while we're waiting for Councillor Taylor, you're looking for his answer? We could go with Councillor Chechka, and then we'll get back to Councillor Taylor.
Thanks. Through the chair to administration, regarding the mailouts, my preference is the earlier the better to get that out, and maybe with a notice saying a public hearing will be scheduled shortly. Please check the website for the dates that it will be, because I think earlier is better, and that way they can just they can do their due diligence to keep informed. and ask questions.
Any other? What's in there?
Oh, sorry, I lost them. Counselor Persicny, if I can get you back here, you're good to go.
Yeah, through the deputy mayor, further to Councillor Shaka. I would say that we should send out a letter. My idea of a letter is right away that, hey, there's going to be an open house and there'll be a public hearing. They're your last two opportunities to speak towards this. And just do it right away and only once. You don't have to do it every single time. Because then those people who are directly most affected are going to have a notice and they're going to have two chances to speak on it. I had another point I was going to say to that as well. Oh, and the utility bills, just letting people know about the fact that they can go in there and look at it. We talked about that, which may be late too, but it wouldn't hurt that people can go in and see the changes to their property and see that. So I don't think we need to send them a letter every single time.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay, Counselor Taylor, I think they have the answer to your question you asked
I was
earlier.
gonna comment on I'll just, through the deputy mayor, just comment on the letters. I agree with Councillor Persicny, about when we should set it. And if we, like, I guess we can't give specific dates at this time, but just a general, maybe it's just a general, like, it's coming up in March, right? And I like the idea of also sending out links, whether it be in the mailer or bills, whatever, that you can check that link, you can go to that map and see how things are changing yourself, that interactive portion, I think, is important. So, and don't know if we have the answer or we'll wait.
No, well, we're still waiting. Counselor Moore.
Through the deputy mayor to Clayton, how will all this figure in the timeline, which is the trade fair, which is coming up?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, well, I guess, the trade show's, I think, at the end of April. I think, in administration's mind, we set out a project timeline for ourselves. We would hope to have this in front of council for decision, in March and April. I don't think we plan on going back to the public unless, again, I mean, we're at the mercy of council here in terms of how they want to stick on this, but we didn't have plans to this. We hope it's adopted by the time the trade show is, but I guess that remains to be seen, so.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Counselor Taylor, I guess we'll find your answer and get back to you. Are you done with your presentation now?
The definition that you mentioned, indoor rec facility, would be where a library would fall.
Go ahead, Counselor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor. And then tied into that, then we look at sort of the renovations that the library is embarking on with parking, and to ensure that it falls within the parameters set out in the new bylaw, right? And for the life of me, I can't remember how many parking stalls we're sort of looking at with the library, just ensuring that we're sort of hitting the mark, right, with that. Just following with the definition, if that's the definition, right? And I think it was one space for every 30 meters squared, I think it was.
So,
Yeah.
just through David Mayor. So I think one thing to remember is that the library development permit's already been approved for, so it's contemplated under the existing bylaw. So the new bylaw wouldn't apply. Having said that, it's a good point, though. There is a provision under the administrative that says, because it talks about this, is that if you apply under the current bylaw and the new one's adopted before you get an approval, you can still be considered under the old bylaw. But we've also put a provision in there that it's also the choice of the landlord, because maybe it's more advantageous for them to get a decision under the new one. So I found this in a previous bylaw I did, that we provided that option to landowners because maybe the new bylaw provides an advantage to them. So, anyway, but yeah, to answer the bylaw, the permit for the library's already been considered, so wouldn't apply.
Okay, if you're all done, thank you very much. And like I said, if you have the feedback, then thanks.
Excellent work. Really.
Yes, good job.
Okay, up next is Corporate Services, presented by Morgan Roberts, Economical Development Officer.
Thank you and good evening. Morgan Roberts, Economic Development Officer for the Town of Edson. Tonight we are speaking about the Town of Edson's first Economic Development Plan. This is very exciting for a lot of people in the community. There has been a lot of discussion in the community about this document coming out. The Economic Development Plan was identified in the 2022 to 2025 Strategic Plan as an actionable item, and the process has gone fairly well. An RFP went out, and Delight was selected to create the plan and to work with both stakeholders, businesses, and council on generating a workable document that will have longevity here in the community. So tonight we're going to learn a little bit about that plan. So I'd like to introduce the people that have constructed that plan for us. So I'll encourage Paul Blay to come join me here. So Paul is the Managing Director of Delight Economic Advisory, and joined online tonight we have Darcy Action, and she is a Senior Associate with Delight, and they'll be guiding us through the document digitally. So,
Thank you. Would you be okay with switching seats?
absolutely. I'm just going to try to bring it up for you.
Thank you. Thanks, Morgan. Thanks for bringing up the presentation. While you're doing that, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to do the economic development strategy for the town of Edson. It's been a real pleasure. Darcy Acton is joining us by video call. Darcy, would you like to say hi? This would be an opportunity to test your microphone as well.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Perfect. It is nice to see everyone again. Looking forward to showing the plan and hearing your thoughts.
Thanks, Darcy. In addition to the plan, which is in your agenda, you also have a two-pager that we've created. It's meant to be something that you can turn to frequently, keep on hand as you're considering activities, initiatives that the municipality will be pursuing in the future. It has on the first page, or on the front page, I guess, has the vision and the three main strategic directions, and then on the reverse side is a more specific, detailed itemization of the strategic directions, their actions, and key performance indicators that will indicate how progress is being made. I think I'll say that the strategy, when you read it, I hope first of all that you saw your voice in it, that you heard your voice, you saw your voice. I hope that you saw the voice of the community, and I hope that you recognize that we've tried to be as tactical as possible from the RFP. And through conversations with staff, it was clear that this needed to be more than just a 30,000-foot look at the community. It needed to have some clear tactics, some clear actions that Morgan and the rest of the community could take on. So, with that, maybe I'll switch over. Is that okay? Yeah, I'll switch over. We'll swap water bottles. Thank you. This way you can just sit back and relax. There's no responsibilities. Okay. So, welcome and introductions been done. Oh, my name is Paul Blay. I'm a managing director with the Economic Advisory Group of Deloitte. Deloitte's best known for its accounting and its auditing practice, but we have a strong team of economic advisors. Prior to joining Deloitte a couple of years ago, I was Morgan. I was Morgan for 3 different municipalities, urban and rural communities. I was involved with business attraction and business retention, with tourism, with agriculture, with resource-based industries, and then I turned to consulting. And through that, I've had a real pleasure, privilege, I guess more than pleasure, privilege of being in a lot of communities across Canada to hear about the opportunities, the challenges, the hopes and dreams and the worries that members of communities have for their place, and trying to craft that into a strategy that gives direction on how to spend the precious time and the precious money that you've dedicated to economic development. A firm that I owned and built, co-owned and built over 15 years, was acquired by Deloitte 2 years ago, and so our team, 15 of us, moved into Deloitte to support the broader economic advisory practice. I'll be giving a short project overview. We'll also look at the strategic framework and look more specifically at the actions. And then Darcy and I would love to hear your reaction to the economic development strategy, and then we'll talk about next steps. So here we are now. It's fun to be in the bottom right-hand corner of one of these charts. That means that we're nearing the close of the project. We've been through a significant process of background analysis, of data analysis on the quantitative side, but also, as importantly, on the qualitative side, hearing from people, getting a sense, as I said, to understand what challenges and opportunities they see for Edson, and bringing the quantitative and the qualitative together into an action plan. We're here now at a stage where we're presenting a draft and looking forward to your feedback for wrapping up. Vision that we identified for the strategy is something that's consistent. Morgan, I'm glad in your opening you mentioned the strategic plan, council's strategic plan, because we did consciously also try and ensure that there's a fit, that there's nothing that that there's a fit between the corporate strategy, the council strategy, and this economic development strategy. The vision, I believe, lines up with that. Enhancing economic development in Edson, linking the community and businesses to create a thriving economy that will meet the needs of current and future residents. This is just one image, one graph from a bunch of quantitative analysis that's in the report. I thought it's pretty interesting because it shows a few things. The size of the circles indicates the size by employment of those industry sectors in Edson. If you're curious why forestry isn't on there, the warehouser and related industries, those will be included in the manufacturing sector, for instance. So you have the size of it, but on the X and the Y axis are really interesting. On the X-axis, it shows the growth of that industry sector between 2018 and 2022. If the industry is on the left-hand side of the up and down axis, that means there's been a negative growth or decline in the industry. If it's on the right-hand side, it's shown growth within Edson. The higher the industry sector is, the more significant the cluster of the industry is in Edson. If the industry cluster, that decimal number where you see, like for instance, transportation 1.12, if it's 1.0, it means it's about as significant a cluster or sector in Edson as you would expect to see in anywhere else in Alberta. If it's under 1.0, it means it's less than what you would expect to see. And if it's higher than 1.0, if it's higher than 1.0, then it's more. So the stronger, the clusters that we believe have opportunity are more so the ones that have the higher numbers and also streaming towards positive growth. If we move into the next bit of the analysis and put some of those sectors on another graph, it starts to narrow down some possibilities. Although in Edson, I will say this graph is a little bit challenging because what we're showing here is the relative economic impact of a sector. So the higher it is on that chart, the greater potential we see for economic growth in that sector. In the action plan, we want to encourage your time and money to be spent on areas that you can have influence on. And so the right-hand side, or the further to the right, those sectors have we believe, a little bit more influence that the town can have on those sectors. For instance, logging, forestry, oil and gas, a lot of the decision-making around investment in those sectors is around the price of that commodity. So if the price of that commodity is great, you see an inflow of investment. If the price is not great, then you see not a great inflow of investment. Not a lot the town can do about that, but you can do certain things like just ensuring that you have available property for them to move in when the time is right and when investment flows in. And our philosophy around the economic development strategy is to focus as much as possible on industry sectors that bring new money into the community, adding new wealth. The aspirations that we heard from the community were centered around encouraging continuation of a diversified economy. So you're blessed to have not just one strong resource-based economy, you have two strong resource-based economies. You are a service hub, a retail and service hub for a region, which brings new money into the community every day. And ensuring that diversification continues is a foundation is an aspiration, and became a foundation to the economic development strategy. You're geographically well located on a main highway, you're on a main railroad. You are located between two significant centers in terms of tourist traffic, Edmonton and Jasper. And there's opportunity to continue to grow and diversify your service-based sector because of that. An aspiration, an overwhelming support during the engagement indicated a desire to enhance beautification efforts of the corridor. That came up in your conversation around the land use bylaw in some instances, and congratulations on getting to the point with that land use bylaw. Those are critical documents for economic development. And a fourth aspiration that we'd like to highlight here is that it continues to be that Edson continues to be a vibrant community that has amenities, activities for all demographic ranges. You do have a relatively young population in Edson, which is a fantastic competitive advantage. It means that employers have confidence, more confidence than average, that they're going to be able to find the people that they need for their business to grow. So the three strategic directions that are identified in the strategy are support local businesses, create a regional hub for health and recreation, and focus on laying the groundwork for investment readiness. I'll go through each of these three in a little bit more detail. This is on that two-pager that I showed you earlier. Each of these charts is on that, but. Supporting local businesses. Outcomes here are improving business engagement, increasing housing diversity and population growth in Edson. I have to say on improving business engagement, I think Morgan, frankly, has been doing a fantastic job in reaching out to the business community on a one-on-one level, and that's really what this is all about. She's gotten clearly a head start on this economic development strategy, which is wonderful. There was a formal business retention expansion program visit survey finished in late 2022, like December 2022. So it's just a little bit more than a year old. So beyond the informal approaches, we'd encourage you to continue a more formal approach so that you can relevantly statistically measure business satisfaction in your community and see how that changes over the years. It's a small investment to understand how the business community's priorities are changing and how you can adapt to that. Support workforce attraction and retention efforts. In that survey of 2022 and reinforced in the conversations we had during this project is that one of the main challenges that businesses are facing is finding people, is attracting the right workforce to support their existing operations, but also their planned growth. And there's many that are planning growth. Strategies around encouraging a diverse range of housing, which came up in your conversation around the land use bylaw, and supporting some recruitment efforts and maybe even working regionally to attract workforce. Provide business programming targeting all stages of the business cycle. This is something, the town doesn't have to, in the strategy, doesn't necessarily take the lead on all of these initiatives. In this case, this is a great one for other service providers in the area to support. So Community Futures is an excellent example here. But ensuring that there are no gaps, that everyone from home-based businesses to the largest of the businesses have the support they need. Objective 2 is creating a regional hub for health and recreation. An outcome is being recognized as a rural community of choice in Alberta by residents and visitors, and this plays significantly into the notion of workforce attraction and workforce retention. Indirectly supporting entrepreneurs. But also just directly supporting the potential growth of some other sectors. Your hospital is incredible. It's not brand new now anymore, but there's still opportunity to build more of a healthcare cluster around the facilities that are there. So there are a number of action items related to that. And then we don't have a lot around tourism. I think we heard loud and clear through the engagement that tourism isn't, in its purest sense, isn't and shouldn't be a big priority for Edson to invest a lot of time and money on, and we agree. But there are opportunities to attract signature events to the community using your facilities, and that does something for building a strong place that people want to live in, and may have the indirect ability to attract some new people into the community for a weekend visit or what have you. And the third strategic priority is to focus on investment readiness, and by that, what our team means is that when investors come along, you want to have some market-ready opportunities for them to be able to act on. After an investor, as you all know, after an investor makes a decision that they'd like to be somewhere new, time is money. Every day that is lost is another day that is not at the end of the process making revenue. So the faster they can move, the better for them, and they'll prioritize communities that have serviced commercial and industrial land, for instance, or have efficient development planning processes. So we are encouraging a more complete internal investment attraction assessment, establishing an investment database and engagement plan. So CRM, we're strong believers in CRM, which is essentially an internal database that tracks contacts that you have in the case of economic development with the business community and across the municipality. It would be helpful for everyone to understand what kind of interactions have been had. And then determine more specifically some investment targets for the town. So all in all, we have a vision, we have 3 strategic directions, 7 objectives within those, 14 actions. Within the action plan, we've provided examples and best practices that Morgan and the team can lean on to see maybe some situations to emulate, and we're providing that 2-page strategy and KPI summary sheet. So in closing, just would like to emphasize a few thoughts. First, congratulations on investing in economic development. I know it's been a couple of years, 2 to 3 years at least, that you've been doing that. Seeing economic development as an investment versus a cost is key to being able to appreciate that there is a return on investment. You have enough here in Edson to proceed with confidence. You certainly can be doubtful of certain things, but there's a lot to go on, and we think that the action plan that we've built allows you to move forward on areas where you're ready to move forward. Small business and big business, a lot of attention, of course, gets focused on $1 million of investment, research and bigger industry, and those are obviously critically important to any community that has them. But economic research shows over and over again that the additions of 1 and 2 employees, the small investments that smaller businesses are making add up to beyond what big business brings to communities. So focusing on those small businesses is as important. Internal control versus external control. There are those macroeconomic factors like the price of timber and the price of a barrel of oil that affect your economy. But I'm a strong believer that communities can control their own destiny. And I hope that you see through the action plan that there are things that you can do that will have a positive impact on things. Collaborate, as mentioned, not all of these are town-led initiatives, but there are times where you want to move forward individually, but there are opportunities to move collaboratively that are both efficient financially and may bring better results. And retention and attraction, paying, as I mentioned about before, paying attention to your existing businesses, but also keeping a focus on investment attraction. So that's the presentation. We have a question. Obviously, council members of the committee of the whole can ask any question they'd like. But we'd love to hear back specifically on if you think the vision and the strategic directions fit with your expectations for economic development. So, thank you, Deputy Mayor Chenard. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Moore, do you have a question?
Through the Deputy Mayor to Paul, Objective 1.2 of the Support Local Business sentence says, work to support recruitment efforts than enhance Edson's unique workforce needs. Shouldn't that be that?
That should be that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks, Councillor Moore, for that. Councillor Taylor.
Through the Deputy Mayor to our guest, to our presenter, thank you so much for bringing this here tonight. Obviously, one of the huge priorities of this council is economic development, and certainly having a plan is a step in the right direction. Reading through the three strategic priorities, very much in favor of the first one, support local business. And you sort of said it at the end, or indicated at the end, about looking at not only just big businesses, but those small businesses as well. Attracting big business is huge, and then I always think of those smaller businesses to complement. Like, obviously, we're seeing a new Cascade power plant come online here within the next few months. You're going to see lots of, what I foresee is a lot of businesses coming online to complement that, whatever the needs that they have or contractors that they need. Same with our pivotal project that's happening, right? So very much in favor of that. Favor of the third goal as well, so the groundwork for investment readiness. I struggle, though, with the second one, and maybe only about half of it. The first one, the half of it I'm supportive of is the idea of amenities, the idea that of attracting businesses and individuals to our community for what we have to offer, whether it is obviously building a new multiplex or library renovations or walking trails and bike parks and all the things we have, good schools, all those things help to attract people to our community. Huge. The bit I maybe struggle with a little bit is the idea of putting our eggs into this like a health hub near our hospital. And you sort of indicated at the end about there are factors that are beyond our control, and getting into that health world is a factor that can be a little bit beyond our control. We've had our hospital open for a number of years now, and I don't know about new businesses popping up because of it. We struggle finding physicians. We struggle finding people in the healthcare world to move here. So I'm not saying it's not a priority to attract them, but to make it that priority that's going to be the spring point to economic development in our community. I'm not sold on myself as the direction of to take it over the next 10 years. That's just my comments on that. I guess hearing from you where maybe you heard from members of the public about why they thought that was an important economic development strategy over the next 10 years is why we could be at that central hub. I don't see it myself at this point, but maybe hearing your comments and what you've heard from the roundtables and things like that can swing me another way, so.
Thank you. Through Deputy Mayor Chenard to Councillor Taylor. I'll start off on a response, and then perhaps Darcy may have something to follow up on. She was more involved in the local engagement. Although I'll say I'm not sure it is as strong a strategic direction from local engagement as it is from our efforts to try and find another way to diversify the Edson economy. If we look at the strategic assets that you have compared to other rural communities that people may be considering moving out within a couple of hours of the Edmonton metro area, that's certainly something that is unique, unique and a competitive advantage. The recognizing the challenges that all rural communities have with attracting physicians and other, I guess, the healthcare professionals, let's say, not just physicians, healthcare professionals. You also wouldn't want to take your foot off the pedal in that sense too, because the situation can get worse if there's not an effort to ensure that you're prominently in front of that target. You also, when I say you, I mean Edson also, has other gaps in the healthcare services sector that can become competitive advantages to attracting residents that your employers are seeking. So we're trying to identify a new way to kind of diversify, create a unique frame of conversation that Edson can portray to the rest of the world that other rural communities can't, that are within that sort of traffic shed of Metro. So, Darcy, do you have any thoughts on what maybe came out of the engagement or other thinking around this?
Yes, thank you, Paul. And through the deputy mayor, I think Paul covered it really well. But what we heard from some of the engagement was specifically around gaps in some amenities for local. So again, speaking to that quality of life and resident attraction, kind of pairing that with an asset that you already have can bring those quality of life factors to the forefront. So making it like a mini rural cluster around health, around recreation, and around wellness can definitely add to the quality of life. So Paul, I think you spoke to that really well, but that's what we did here in engagement. And we also, to Paul's point, wanted to find the bigger economic spin on that, if that helps.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Does anyone else in council have a question? Okay, Councillor Cheska, you're up.
Thank you. Through the chair to Paul or Darcy, thank you for the presentation. My question is kind of around that you've got an objective 1.2. Both of them kind of talk about the gaps in worker recruitment efforts. And in the more detailed version of the report, it talks about how Edson, when comparing to our peers as well, our peer neighbors, as well as the province, that we don't have the same education levels, that we're a little bit behind there. And in addition, that our population is also declining. And that's something that we've already been aware of. That was a little bit of a surprise. And then in addition to that, we did have a kind of a branch of a regional college in town previously, and they kind of shut down overnight without any notice. So you've got, an action item there, but how do you change that? Because that's something that, we see across the entire community, that, businesses have to bring in workers from outside sources to recruit them in, because we don't have the people in our community to fill those roles. And it's been a struggle for a really long time. What kind of things can we do to fix that?
Through Chair Chenard to Councillor Chaka. It's a good question, and it's one where I think it takes investment in a campaign that is social media based largely, and I'll say that the communities that do it most successfully, that kind of change the narrative a little bit about what their place is like, I think they use they use testimonials, or they get testimonials from the community. People from the community give their endorsement for their place. So I think it's the most powerful thing that can come from a community is not the economic development officer saying that Edson is a great place, or members of council saying it's a great place, because anyone would expect that to come from those people. But to have a business person say, I wholeheartedly agree that Edson is a great place to do business, and I'd encourage any of my peers to come here. To have somebody who just moved here and opened up a pharmacy say that is the best decision I've ever made in my life, coming to Edson, be happy to have you here as well. Those are very powerful stories. And I think you have a lot of those in this community that you could harness. There's a community not too far west from here, the Robson Valley region, which is Valemount, McBride, on the other side of Jasper in British Columbia. If you look at their website, they've just redone it, but it still contains elements of things that have been on there for many years. It's called Invest RVR, I think. Invest Robson Valley Region, Invest RVR. You'll see a website that has videos of small acreage farmers who've moved from the city to Robson Valley Region, people working in value-added forestry, of a really wide complement of their community, just telling a heartfelt story about why they're there. And you're obviously more urban than that, but there are a lot of compelling stories like that in the community. And so I think it takes a concerted effort. It takes an investment of money and significant time to pull a website and a social media program like that together. But it does create a very strong narrative that's very believable because it's coming from people who have no real reason to otherwise say that this is a great place. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great work by yourself, Paul, Morgan, and Darcy. I do have a question just following up on Councillor Taylor's comment about healthcare. So when you're talking about making a healthcare hub, are you talking more about things like medical imaging, those sorts of things, or are you talking more about things like yoga studios and fitness places? 'Cause I know we have a lot of that already in our community. So I guess what is your vision for that? And as well as I go through this report, attachment 3, economic development strategy and action plan background report, you use Bonnyville as a comparator, and I'm a little confused as why they were chosen when we have places like Drayton Valley and Rocky Mountain House, which are closer, which are a little bit more similar to our community, but maybe there's some background there that I'm not aware of.
Through Chair Chenard to Mayor Zahara, thanks for the question. To the second question first, perhaps. The comparators were discussed as to where we should go. Bonnyville, similar size in a rural district, a rural area like Edson, on a pathway between two significant places, Cold Lake and Edmonton. So there were some realistic comparisons. You're right. A multitude of different communities could have been used for that. They're also like most rural communities. To say their economy is based on oil and gas will not differentiate them from any other rural community in Alberta. But those were the main reasons for doing that. When in the conversation around the healthcare hub, actually Darcy used the term wellness, which is in the strategy, but I didn't emphasize that, and I think that's a really important word because it does distinguish it from. Do you need more? Do you need an MRI? Do you need a physiotherapist? Do you need an ophthalmologist in the community? It's broader than that. It is about wellness, and that is also a bit about changing the narrative around what people from the outside of Edson would think of Edson. They wouldn't. I don't think driving through would think of this as a place where wellness thrives, right? And the more that you can do that, the more that you present. And it's not, you're not stretching the truth. You're just telling it in a different way, and you're presenting the community in a manner where that outsiders will feel instantly positive about the place. So I do think it is about yoga studios and holistic medicine and all those things, as well as our more traditional services in medicine. I was just thinking that one of the examples we gave as a best practice was the downtown Red Deer investment attraction plan. And most of the examples we gave aren't projects that we did, but we did do the downtown Red Deer investment attraction plan. And one of the suggestions there was to create more of their hospital is downtown, more of a healthcare wellness hub. And I can visualize an image that we had in that strategy that showed the different elements of a cluster like that, from wellness to traditional healthcare. So I think it'd be worth popping that into the strategy just to give a better explanation for those that are wondering about it. Does that answer your question? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Does anyone else in council have a question? If not, if you're done, thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Chechka.
Thanks. Through the chair to Paul, Morgan, or Darcy. It's on page 37. And it says that that Edson should leverage policies at the federal and provincial levels to support its transition to a green economy and culture. What exactly do you mean by that?
And this is where Darcy may be able to jump in. I can see you're looking at the strategy, which I don't have in front of me. But I mean, it's a more general reference, I guess you could say, to the overall transition of our economy, of the global economy, to more clean energy based economy. It would have to do with when, if businesses are looking to, are exploring ideas around what that could mean of having resources. Maybe it's not internal, but knowing the connections that those businesses can reach out to discuss opportunities in the clean energy industry. Maybe there's elements of funding available to them. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, last call. If anyone has any questions and you're done with your presentation, thank you very, very much. It was very detailed and we will read through it, but thank you.
Thank you, Chair Swear. Thank you, members of council.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, moving forward, I guess our next item would be questions from media or public regarding, and if the public is here, when you come up, please state your name, and if you have a question, who you direct it to. Giles, do we know if anyone online has questions? Okay, we have a couple people in the audience, so please come up.
Hi, my name is Joanne Sobon. Through Deputy Mayor Chenard to, I think maybe Mr. Kitlitz, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm not sure if it's too late to bring this up, but one of the ideas we had about notifying people about the change in their land use bylaw designations, I guess. Councillor Chuchka mentioned about specifically the the ones with the black dots around, which were for sure changed as far as the designations. We ourselves, on 3 of our properties, aren't black-lined, and there's significant changes. So I think it's very important that everybody get notification, for sure. Even to say, you know what, this is what your designation was, like, I don't know how hard that is, but if we put it into the utility bill and you say, this is what your designation was, this is what it's going to, check into it, right? I don't know if a link is sufficient or not, but it's pretty serious because, I mean, we do have several properties in town, but 3 are significant in the commercial end specifically. So I don't know how to address that is the one thing. And then the other thing, same for the public presentations, can we just make sure they're not during business hours? So that the public can attend.
Mr. Mayor, you'd like to respond to that?
Sure, I think that's really good feedback, so we'll certainly take that back. And
Thank you.
absolutely, I think that if we're gonna have an open house, we gotta make sure it's a time that's convenient for residents.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you for showing up, thank you. Okay, so I believe if that's it, there's just one more item that we need to do. Who will make that? Councillor Chechka.
I move that the meeting be adjourned.
Okay, all those in favor? Those opposed? Thank you.